Delete this bitch-ass character. Seriously, do I really need to explain this one? Kollector was created for the sole purpose of being the mascot of MK's first ever loot-based bonanza to get the kiddies hyped up for microtransactions. I know it, you know it, Yaros knows it, so let's just agree to never mention him again.
Yeah, about that. In all my years of gaming, I've scarcely ever encountered a character that's more creatively bankrupt than Kollector. Appearing for the first and last time, which should already tell you something, in Mortal Kombat 11, Kollector is the biggest exercise in creative fasting I've ever seen. Goro has 4 arms, this guy has 6. Baraka speaks through growls, Kollector speaks through growls with an accent.
Take it from.
Reptile is green, Puss face is blue, I could go on. He has about as much creativity as Joe Rogan has hair. This is exactly the kind of thing that happens when a character is not motivated by common sense or creative expression, but by corporate mandates to make every kind of allusion to purchasable loot possible, subliminal or, in this case, otherwise, resulting in something that looks less like a full-fledged Mortal Kombat character and more like some misshapen furry that escaped from the crypt. A door-to-door tax collector with a bag full of trinkets. What a mountain of subtlety you are. Creative fighter abortions look better than this. Kollector is the ugly mug I look every time my day is going a little too well. So never. So I stand by all the venom I down forward wand on this character, none of which contradicts what I'm about to do now, which is essentially create a new character from scratch who just so happens to also be called Kollector. That's how radically different this version is. I mean, there's still gonna be some crossover, but superficial at best. Alright, now that I blew my resentment load all over him, sorry if you were in the way, let's see how to turn old chicken legs into an instant fan favorite. Or a train wreck. First, visuals. Now, going by what the game inspires, obviously we should retain the many weapons and artifacts theme, but instead of keeping everything in a fucking school bag, I think it would be much cooler if all this stuff came from within somewhere.
Is this stuff coming out of you?
Bum jokes aside, the most elegant and mysterious way to do this would be to conceal everything within a robe and long flowy sleeves. Kollector should be a robed, hooded figure like a monk or a zealot from Heroes 3, which is as much of a no-brainer as it is an untapped gold mine. I mean, can you believe we've never had a hooded, no-faced character in MK before after all these titles? Sure, there's Shadow Priests, but Shadow Priests are not a character, they are a backdrop. So this would be the perfect opportunity to introduce one such mystery character, not quite as spooky as a Dementor, a Malthael, or a Nazgul, but definitely as cool and enigmatic. An eclectic mix of robes or tunics and armor pieces, greaves, gauntlets, ring mails. He would walk, not float, and carry himself with a stride that could be interpreted as both dignified and unassuming depending on where you stand and what you drink. He summons various weapons from his sleeves and from within his robes, yet unlike this pre-alpha looking abortion, he's much more devil-may-care with them, summoning a different implement for almost every string, perhaps even normal, and just nonchalantly throwing them away after the strike, thrust, or slash is done. Think Hela from Thor Ragnarok, only with a much greater variety of weapons than just swords. Flails, maces, axes, daggers, morning stars, kukri, wakizashi, and this is just the mundane stuff. Exploding orbs, barbed traps, poison vials like kamikaze Kirby's from the Netherrealm. The sky's literally the limit with this character. He is the literal Pandora's box of MK and could summon anything from that sexy black hole of a body of his. The stage would literally be filled with offhand weapons that Kollector just casually throws around. You could even keep the multiple arms idea, whereby these extra arms, be they real or shadowy, emerge from under his robes during certain attacks, surprising and overpowering the opponent, and allowing him to casually employ yet more weapons. Have him hide his extra limbs just like General fucking Grievous. Finally, a character where using an entire armory makes sense. Throw daggers, chakrams, pull a greatsword out of your ass for one big attack, then discard it. It'll look great. Basically, let's turn Kollector into a Skyrim protagonist. A kleptomaniac that loots every single thing they find, then mercilessly unloads it all in an epic battle against a level 1 slime. Kollector is an emotionless, hooded enforcer lobbing a blacksmith's shop's worth of weapons at you. Bonus points if you can make it different weapons or variations of weapons every single time. His X-ray / fatal blow could be pulling a Gilgamesh from the Fate series and throwing a fuck ton of weapons and projectiles at you. And you could have fun and add a random element to it, like perhaps one of his attacks in particular has like a 2% chance of producing a special weapon skin instead of the regular one, and it would have to be some kind of pathetic useless attack, like a dagger attack, and that special skin could be a dagger named the Jiggler and there would be an achievement attached to it. Imagine how embarrassing it would be to be hit by a weapon called the Jiggler. Also imagine how much fun you could have designing variations for this guy. An entire glossary could be filled with the kind of stuff Kollector could whip out, like perhaps some kind of gigantic eggplant that explodes into a fountain of sticky Basically Cryomancer Sub-Zero, but with a much greater variety of weapons on offer. Bigger weapons for more damaging attacks with slower startups and bigger range, and smaller ones for faster, lighter attacks. The spirits tell me that tomes and scrolls should also be a part of his repertoire, with all sorts of incantations and magical explosions happening. As for the archetype that he should fit in, this is the ultimate jack-of-all-trades character. However, jack-of-all-trades characters are shit and tend to be the weakest, cause as a designer you're forced to depower most of his tools, lest he do everything well and becoming overpowered. So I think Kollector should lean more towards a setup style of character, with traps galore and all sorts of elaborate setups. He'll still retain some keep away and raw pressure game of course, so he's basically an all-rounder with a hefty emphasis on setups. He could place an offensive rune like a floating red pentagram, and while it's active and he pressures you, his fists charge up with red energy, which is then discharged on one of his weapon attacks, dealing a shit ton of extra damage. The catch is the rune only reacts to blocked attacks, which is a win-win really, cause if you get a clean hit and a combo going, you're winning. At the game, of course, definitely not at life. The defensive rune is the more interesting one though, because it affects your opponent's behavior. Once you set it off, them pressuring you would charge your super meter at about double or even triple the normal rate, so you effectively make them think twice before attacking you. You could also combine chains that lift the opponent into the air with throwing weapons that keep them into the air, with fast, flashy sword strikes with a teleport that goes through the opponent, whereby Kollector seemingly dematerializes into just his flowy robes that then envelop and slither around the opponent to the other side, where Kollector becomes fully tangible again, a jewelry box that contains a horrifying demon arm and acts as a trap and a setup tool, tiny hand axe normals reminiscent of Scorpion's MK3 combos, a pocket watch that slows down time for both players, a scalpel, sponge, magic wand, anal beads, dildos, and blah. Of course you'd have to pick and choose, you can't have all of this stuff, but the broad point is that the base character idea teases the imagination quite effortlessly. He's a character that likes stuff, sometimes even junk, and he wants the junk because he is, say it with me, he's a collector. Kollector, more commonly known as the Kollector, since he's a much more mysterious and singular being than his NRS counterpart, is an enigmatic figure that roams the realms in search of various items. The cool thing about it is, sometimes those items make sense to collect, sometimes they don't. Sometimes he could be gunning for some artifact, wand, enchanted axe, hammer, sword of terrible power, and sometimes he seems to be interested in just junk. Trinkets, a toy, a hairpin, a strange-looking pebble. No one knows exactly what his deal is and why he collects the things he does, but he is laser-focused on this stuff, and once he has it, he takes it back to his domain, a sprawling structure, somewhere between a castle, a mansion, and a fortress, imposing and as full of his vast collection of items as it is devoid of life. This domain could reside in several interesting places. It could be an outworld, that would make sense, since this collector could have ties to Shang Tsung and perhaps Reptile, Kollector and Reptile being the sorcerer's associates that do some of his dirty work for him, or the domain could reside in the Netherrealm. Since there are many layers to the Netherrealm, the Collector's abode could be sandwiched in between two of the layers. This could allow him to sometimes snatch certain people in the moment of their death, grabbing them during their descent through hell and pulling them into his home in order to take something of theirs for himself. Chaos Realm could also be an interesting homeland, a vortex of perplexing geography, impossible geometry, and constant decay. Kollector's mansion could stand as a bastion of order in a storm of chaos. Not that his castle would be very orderly, mind you. Particularly in the Chaos Realm version, the stairs and walkways would line every angle, the rooms and corridors would be glued to the ceiling, left would be right, and right would be up, and it would be impossible to navigate it on your own. But perhaps the most compelling idea is for it to exist in all the realms. Part of it is an outworld, part of it an Earthrealm. One wing could be accessed through Edenia, another through Sado, a multi-dimensional structure that exists in all places at the same time. This would facilitate Kollector's goals of accessing all the realms with ease for his scavenger hunts. Another option would be for Shang Tsung's island to actually be Kollector's island. Shang just uses it to host the tournaments. Whatever the case, the Kollector would be an interesting being in terms of how he interacts with other characters. Most people don't want to mess with him. The full extent of his powers is not known, and the impressive array of weapons and artifacts he's already gathered ensure that crossing him would be costly, perhaps fatal. So most people steer clear of him, more powerful characters tolerate him or try to strike deals with him, and the foolhardy try to trick or kill him. always to their peril. The Collector is not an aggressive being. He does not usually attack people or look for trouble. He's fairly unassuming in his movements and body language, he keeps to himself, and only really makes his presence known when he wants something from you. And this is where it gets nerve-wracking. The Collector scavenges for various trinkets he finds valuable. Sometimes those trinkets are possessions of other characters, so the Collector might challenge them for it. Which, sometimes that works out smoothly. The challenged party's like, what, this piece of junk? You can have it. And the Collector takes it and quietly, wordlessly moves on. But other times, it could be an object of great value to the challenged person. It could be their main weapon, it could be an item of sentimental value, and they're not willing to give it up. In that case, they either agree to the challenge, which is always some kind of stressful, perplexing riddle or conundrum, perhaps some type of gauntlet run or physical challenge, or if you refuse, you fight or run. This could lead to a lot of high-octane fight chases between the Collector and characters like Kano, Sonya, Johnny, Stryker, with lots of platforming, parkour, lots of fighting in corridors, tight places, or on rooftops, trains as the Mark desperately tries to get away. The Collector could, for instance, appear in front of Johnny Cage and ask for his glasses, to which Johnny would reply, "Fuck no. Look man, an autograph I can do, but you ain't touching the shades." And Collector doesn't talk, so he'd have to point at the glasses and say he wants them. If you try to leave, he gets in the way. There's all sorts of touchy situations you could organize, like Collector wanting Lao's hat, Liu's nunchucks, Jax's arms, or Ashra's innocence. The cool thing about this is many of the things that Collector retrieves turn out to be, in a very long, roundabout way, very useful things. Stuff that the donor had no idea they had in their possession. Like one of Kano's daggers that he won in some card game turns out to be the key to opening this gigantic vault in Outworld filled with untold riches and long-forgotten devil weapons that the Collector might take or just leave for anyone to find or use to tear a hole through Kano's precious black dragon. You never know. So people get paranoid around Collector, because again, sometimes it's just some random worthless piece of junk that he wants and that the character is willing to give, but given Collector's reputation, it makes them think twice about that piece of junk. Maybe it's valuable or will become valuable in the future. Maybe it's a Kamidogu in disguise. They become paranoid and refuse and make their lives harder for probably no reason. In terms of relationships with other characters, it would be really cool to pair this guy up with Aaron Black. The Collector could be an associate of Aaron's, who sometimes hires him to retrieve stuff that he himself doesn't have time to get, or that Aaron's skill set is better suited towards, or just requires a lot of talking, I don't know. Aaron retrieves the thing, the Collector pays him. It's very much a mutual scratching of backs situation. And this is where it gets interesting, because one storyline could involve Aaron getting hired by a third party to retrieve something from the Collector's domain. Normally, Aaron would be like, "Fuck you, I got a good thing going here," but this time, this prospective employer is offering something that Aaron desperately wants, something he's been searching for or trying to achieve for a long time. That something could be in the employer's possession, or it could be the very thing that Mr. Black is tasked to steal. Either way, Aaron feels a huge conflict of interest, because crossing the Collector would not just be throwing away a good thing, but it would be dangerous as fuck. No one's ever successfully stolen something from his mansion. On the other hand, Aaron absolutely cannot pass this opportunity up, so this would make for an exciting plotline, I think. The thing that Aaron wants could be anything really. A powerful artifact, a pocket watch that can send him back in time, a piece of jewelry belonging to someone that's important to Aaron. It could be an actual person that's important to Aaron, perhaps in suspended animation. Feel free to brainstorm in the comments. But it's important that it not be money. It wouldn't make sense to be just money. First of all, because Aaron can always get more money in a million other ways, but more importantly, I want there to be a deeper layer to Aaron Black, one that you almost never see. All the bounty hunting, all the money grubbing, that should be a secondary goal or just a way of life. Better yet, perhaps it's the ticket to getting whatever he really wants, which would cost, directly or indirectly, an obscene amount of money. Would round his character out nicely. As for the Collector's true nature and origin, obviously this isn't the kind of thing you just blurt out. At least not initially, but people would speculate about it endlessly. Perhaps he's a shadow priest or an escaped denizen of hell. He could be an old forgotten god, or simply a mortal that has transformed himself using the countless ominous artifacts he's collected. The Kollector is the kind of character that plays nice with various parties, but he's not ultimately allied with anyone. As for what he ultimately wants, perhaps he's trying to take over the realms once he's gathered a particular set of powerful artifacts and used them in tandem. After all, who knows how many other dangerous trinkets like the Kamidogu are lying around in this universe. Perhaps he's a foreign being searching for a way back to his reality. Perhaps he's actually trying to save the realms by ridding them of all the dangerous weapons of mass destruction that could harm them. Maybe he has foresight and can identify simple objects that would trigger a cascading butterfly effect, ruining entire cities or realms. So he understandably goes to great lengths to prevent that from happening, even if he has to kill one or two people to get it done. Or perhaps he really is just a collector, a cosmic aristocrat with eccentric tastes. Whatever the case, there's an infinite number of possible roads you could take this character down on, and an infinite number of ways you could integrate him into the base franchise or into spin-off games and material. Invading the Collector's Palace could be a tough mission people would play through, be it in some minigame or in its own spin-off action-adventure game. The Kollector himself could become a staple figure in the crypt. Lastly, I'd like to rectify a minor white lie. The title says I completely redesigned the Kollector. In truth, we completely redesigned him. Most of this came through spontaneous conversation in my Discord, just juggling ideas. One thing led to another, and before you knew it, we completely redesigned one of MK's worst characters into, potentially, one of its best. This is the kind of stuff we get up to in there when we don't exchange memes and make fun of each other's favorite characters, shows, and French-made fetishes. So if you like this stuff, if you're passionate about this kind of lore writing, theory crafting, brainstorming, and, like me, can't help but think about how to fix or improve the franchises that you love, feel free to click on the Discord link in the description and say hi. It's not like it'll cost you your soul or anything. Just a small part of it. Special thanks to May Shamwowski, QL, Zoom, H, Your Dead Ninja, Mischievous Loki, and Alexol for helping brainstorm this character. Cheers, guys. By the way, I've been informed that this other dude in this other pic is also called the Kollector, and also has some of these traits. I do not know this character, I have never played Realm, I have no affiliation, I do not get sponsored by him, we don't DM each other, we've never exchanged dick pics to each other, so any common ideas are purely coincidental, and any complaints should be emailed to idon'tgiveafuck@gmail.com. Extra special thanks to Longthorn and Serhi Hrishin for clicking that ultra sexy, alluring, orgasm-inducing join button and supporting the channel.